So cool, Captain Lee Anderton. What a pleasure to actually meet you on a Zoom call. So thanks very much, Lee, for doing this today. I really do appreciate you coming on
No
as a
problem at
guest.
all. It's good to meet you too.
This must be strange for you because you're normally doing the Captain meets. This is flicking it on the opposite for you, and me sort of asking you lots of questions. So
yeah, no, I mean it's there's always been a bit of interest about what Andertons has done on YouTube over the last 10 or 12 years. So yeah, no, I'm always happy to talk about anything really, guitars or YouTube or the business or whatever. So you fire away.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to start with the most important question, and this is the question that everybody. I put a poll out.
Right.
I asked, and I said, like, what do you want to ask Lee? What would you like to ask him? And this came back, I think, about 15 times. And this question was, why the captain? And I think you've probably explained this on probably a YouTube video. So apologies if you've already explained this before. But
no.
Why the captain? Why Captain Lee?
Yeah, I mean, I never had a nickname in my entire life. I've always been Lee. That's it. And then when we started filming with Rob Chapman, and this will be in probably 2009, maybe something like that. Rob said you have to have a nickname. He at the time he was either Chappers or the Monkey Lord, which still gets banded around from time to time. And I said, what do you want to call me then? And he said, well, we should call you the Captain. Of thinking like a naval kind of title, like Captain of the good ship Andertons. And I think he said it on video as well, so I didn't even really have a chance to object. It was just like, okay. And it stuck. I mean, I honestly, it's probably not a name I would have chosen myself, and it's absolutely not meant to infer that I have any kind of military rank or anything like that. And I'm sure it's much harder to be a real captain than a pretend one like I am.
I have a question for you. Does your wife call you the captain, or is it
no? My wife is my most embarrassed kind of fan. Basically, she it's pretty common to be out and about and a guitar player kind of shout from the other side of the street or something, hey, it's a captain, at which point my wife just wishes that a hole would open up beneath her and swallow her into the ground. But
I'm guessing that happens a lot, Lee, because like you're well known on YouTube, and if you're a guitarist you're going to know who you are, so I'm sure that happens when you're out and about a lot. I'm sure you do get someone shout over, hey, it's the captain, or
yeah, it's I mean, not loads and loads. Obviously happens if you're at an event, like a guitar exhibition, or even at a gig somewhere where there's lots of guitar players, you to a certain extent you kind of go, if that's fine. But it'll happen anywhere. I mean, we went to Croatia on holiday in 2021, and like the first thing that happened when we walked into the hotel was the concierge goes, oh, you're the captain. You end up going like, what is going on in the world? How does this happen? So yes, it does happen. I'd say not all the time. I mean, I'm not suggesting, but it gives you a tiny flavor into what must it be like to be like a really well-known celebrity, and you just end up going like, wow, you can understand why they get a bit wound up by it after a while, because it's just like, I just want to do my shopping in Sainsbury's, it's just like
that's what I was going to say. I got images of you walking around Tesco's or Sainsbury's and someone saying, hey, it's the captain, like just walking around the shop.
But look, I mean, honestly, I kind of feel like, I was in my late 30s when we first started doing YouTube. So I know who I am and where I'm from and who all my friends are and all this kind of stuff. And I honestly, I think it would have been quite different had we become as well known, if I'd perhaps been in my teens or my early 20s or whatever like that. Because it is a bit mad to think that, if you actually look at the numbers and you go, there's roughly 1 million people a week tune into the YouTube channel. And you just sort of go, that's completely bonkers. But yes, I think to a certain extent, I'm quite comfortable separating the captain from Lee Anderton. It's like they are two different people, sort of two different people, I think.
I get what you mean, but I mean, on your I've watched loads of Andertons videos. Like most of these people watching this will have watched loads of your videos. But you always come across, Lee, and this is a great thing. You always come across as a very humble guy, a very like a guy that people you could get on with if you bumped into in the pub or somewhere out and about.
Yeah.
Just a humble guy that you could get on with. And I think that's, I don't know, that may be part of your success with Andertons. That seems to, you can talk to just general public about guitars and pedals and everything. And I think that's what, I don't know, do you feel like that's a secret to the success of Anderton's channel? Or
I don't know about I mean, for me, I think
relatable, I sort of, I suppose I mean, but
I always think guitars is a great leveler. I'm quite happy to stand in the shop and talk to someone who's 15 years old and been playing for 6 months and is just fascinated by what is all this pedal stuff, or it might be Steve Vai or John Petrucci or whatever. But fundamentally, the conversation is the same. Yes. They're just all going, oh wow, yeah, did you try that new pedal, and what did you think of that guitar, and it's the same conversation. And it is, I think it's part of the joy of being part of the guitar community. Yeah. I mean, you can read the comments section in YouTube sometimes and you go, yeah, it's clearly not the entire community is a joy, but the vast majority of the guitar community just loves what they do and loves talking about it. So it's all cool.
I was going to ask you about that as well, because with that success and a million people watching the channel, as you just said then, you must get sort of the odd sort of comments. How do you deal with that, Lee? Like, most of the majority of people watching are like myself. They're positive comments. They love the channel. Love all the content. But you're going to get from time to time the odd comment, and I suspect, I don't know, I suspect that stands out amongst all the sort of. How do you deal with that, Lee? Do you sort of ignore it now, or have you got used to it? If there's a sort of
it is, yeah, it's so hard. I don't know what it is about the human psyche, but 99 great comments and 1 bad one. And this will go for anybody on social media, I'm absolutely sure, big channel, small channel, whatever. The bad one has a much more impact on you emotionally than the 99 good ones. And I think for me, I try and walk this middle ground of going, look, you can't accept all the good ones and let it inflate your sense of ego without letting the bad ones have the opposite effect. Okay. So I think you have to kind of walk this slightly blinkered line through YouTube of going, look, if somebody says, oh, wow, that's the best guitar solo I've ever heard, you have to be able to go, I know it's not. I know I'm not at that level. It's a lovely thing for somebody to say, but it's not. I know it's not true. And then equally, if someone says that's the worst guitar solo I've heard, or what, or something even worse than that, you have to go, I know that's not true either. And I'm just, but I think a lot of that, it's really difficult, I suppose ultimately we made a relatively conscious decision at the beginning of YouTube, and I have to thank sort of Rob Chapman for this, which was to not be a vanilla personality. Don't try to just be, don't try not to upset anyone any of the time. Mm-hmm. So I think, it was about going that we have a personality here. We are ultimately going to have views and opinions that maybe not everybody agrees with, and that's fine. And I remember, I think Rob, in fairness, probably takes this almost to another level again, but his mantra was, I'd rather have 50 people love me and 50 people hate me than 100 people never heard of me.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite an interesting, I think to a certain degree, if you want to be successful on, within a social media kind of environment, you sort of have to have that attitude a little bit.
Yeah. No,
but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've got 2 young kids, both of whom see what I do for a living, both of whom are kind of going, oh, I'm going to do that, And I just sit and go, I am quite fearful for what all that kind of negativity that's around on social media would do to someone that was maybe 14 or 15 years old. I'd like to think by the time they get to that age, perhaps some of the companies that, you know, offer all the social media platforms have got a better handle on the sort of, you know, online bullying and abuse that sort of goes on. But I mean, I said, I'm a big boy, you know, I can handle it. It doesn't bother me too much.
So you've got two daughters, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are they? I see videos of you with the teddy bear and things. Are they seem? Are they musical? Or do you think they're going to follow in sort of your footsteps a little bit?
They say all the right things, but they're kind of, you know, they're still probably of that age where the penny hasn't really dropped about just how much practice you have to do to get to a sort of even just a fairly half reasonable sort of standard. So they're quite happy to grab a guitar or sit behind a little kid's drum kit and, you know, make a noise for 5 minutes, and then they're bored and they want to go and do something else. So we shall see. Honestly, that's my dream, is to sort of, you know, vicariously sort of live my life through my children's musical stardom. But I don't know. I did push my eldest daughter quite hard on the guitar side of things. And I could feel I'd overstepped the mark. I'd become that pushy parent, and there was that danger of her going, I've fallen, you know, I physically dislike this instrument now because of how much my dad has kind of tried to push me to play it. So I've backed off of that completely. There's guitars all around the house. There's a little kid's drum kit in one of the girls' bedrooms. And they've got, I tell you, my daughter's really into GarageBand. She does like a lunchtime club at school where some third-party company come in and about 10 of the kids all basically sit around iPads creating their own tunes in GarageBand. So she could probably teach me a few things about that. So that's kind of cool. So there is hope, but yeah, I don't want to push it.
No, I think that's the right approach. I've just recently had a boy, and he's 7 months old now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I've said the same. I hope I stick to it, but I've said, like, if he wants to play the guitar and he's interested, they're always around. If he sees them hanging on the wall and he goes, Dad, can I pick that up or whatever? Then of course I'm gonna give him as much as I can and support him as much as I can. But I don't want to try not to be, and I feel like I might say this, but I might be like try not to push him into it and be forceful and because ultimately, like you said, they're not gonna. It's not gonna come from a place of they really want to do it themselves. You're sort of pushing them a little bit, and then it becomes not fun for them, and they don't want to do it anymore. So, you know, I will be gutted if he wants to be a footballer or whatever else, something different. But it's entirely, at the end of the day, it's entirely down to him. As long as he's happy, I'm happy as well. So, I'm sure you sort of feel the same now. I'm sure.
I think it's important for, you know, I spent probably 20 years on the sales floor in Andertons. And got very, very used to seeing what happens when a dad comes in with their, you know, impressionable young child, it might be 12, 13, 14 years old or whatever. And you can see that the kid has kind of like the eyes sparkle up because they've seen a certain guitar that they quite like there. And then normally the dad goes, oh no, that's not the sensible choice. What we need to do is buy the sensible choice for you, you know, and you just end up going, you can see the sparkle fading in the child's eyes almost immediately. And you're trying to say to the parent, look, that first 6 months or so, everything is just about how much does he pick the guitar up? He or she pick the guitar up. You know, it's like, it doesn't have to be the sensible first option. It just needs to be the one that flicks that switch of excitement. 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line, once they really bang into it, they'll start to make their own sensible decisions about what other stuff they might want to play.
Yes.
But if you walk out the store and the kid's gone, I didn't really want that one, Dad. I'm going to look like, you know, Hank Marvin now, and that's not my role model type thing. But actually, in fairness, I think, you know, parents over the last 10 or 15 years, and then also schools and education generally, are starting to get that you're not going to engage young kids in playing musical instruments if we stick to this very traditional education program of, you know, you must learn on a classical guitar and you must learn green sleeves first and, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's got to be exciting from day one.
Yes.
Because the dropout rate is astronomical. You know, the dropout rate is 95% anyway. So, if you go make it, if you make it more boring, it's like the dropout rate's just going to be, it's like next to impossible. But anyway, I kind of feel, I think schools and parents generally have got better at understanding what they've got to do to get to flick that creative switch in children.
I think you're right, and I've seen that myself. I started out teaching in schools, teaching guitar in schools, and that was about 10 years ago now. And that's part of the reason I left, because I was forced to do a curriculum that I myself didn't enjoy it. If I'm not enjoying it, how am I going to inspire these kids in the room that are like, I want to learn Ed Sheeran, I want to do this, I want to learn Pink, I want to do this. And I'm playing like 10 Green Bottles and like trying to teach them that. And I wasn't passionate about doing that myself. So I was like, how am I going to pass this on to them and inspire them to learn when they don't want to learn this?
I think even the grading system is a problem.
Yes.
Who at 8 years old wants to be told that they failed grade 1? I mean, it's like
horrible. Yeah,
it's horrible. Like, it's a real throwback to some completely out of date, out of touch methodology of teaching what should be, I don't know. I mean, I didn't do art at school or any of those kind of, but creative subjects like art and music should be about participation and the joy of doing it. And yes, at some stage in your life, if you're going, I need to get to another level in this, fine, treat it like a more academic type subject. But, to start off on the piano or the guitar or the clarinet or whatever, straight into this idea of you must rigorously practice to pass this exam at the end of 6 months. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think
I'll get off my soapbox now.
I completely agree, Lee, and I do feel like it's stressful for the child, and it's a horrible thing if they fail their grade 1 or whatever, grade 2. What a horrible thing, like to say, oh, I'm really sorry, but you failed that one. We have to resit that again. Like, that guitar should be fun, as you said. It shouldn't be like that.
Yeah,
But, I agree. But let's talk about Andertons, Lee.
Yes,
that's the most important thing. How did that start out? So for some people, obviously they're not going to know the backstory. I guess it's a family company.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And some of us watch YouTube videos and stuff and know a bit more about it, but general people maybe watching this don't know. Would you mind just sort of telling us a bit of a back history of Andertons?
Yeah. So I guess the potted history is you've got to go back to 1964. So yeah, next year will be our 60th anniversary, which, and as you can see from my youthful good looks, I wasn't around in 1964. But my dad and my granddad were both keen drummers. My granddad, sorry, had been a police officer in London for all of his life, and my dad, I think, was 18 at the time and had finished school at 16 and had worked in a music store in London for about 2 years. And so had kind of picked up the ropes of, had some contacts with some suppliers and sort of had a basic idea of how a music shop worked. So my granddad retired from the police force and took a lump sum pension at that point. I think it was about £2,000 or something like that, so, not a lot of money in today's standards, but enough then to probably get something off the ground.
Yeah.
And they moved to Guildford, which was where my gran was from. So they kind of had a bit of family support around here, and opened the first Andertons. This is right off the back, I suppose, of the sort of, the Beatles explosion. So everybody wanted to learn to play the guitar or learn to play drums or whatever. So there's a tiny store, there are some old black and white photos, I think, on the Andertons website somewhere, but it was a small shop front on like a side street of Guildford town centre, and above the store was a flat that the whole family lived in. And I think before she passed away, I did a lovely interview with my nan on for our 50th anniversary, and she talks about how much, remembering what the takings were on day one. It's kind of mad, and it's like, I can't remember, it was like £2 or something was what the take, it's and again, I'm not even sure I understand what that means in the grand scheme of today's money, but it wasn't a lot, and it was tough at the beginning.
Yes.
And there was a lot of buying of broken instruments and repairing them and then selling them as kind of refurbished instruments and stuff. I think anybody that walks into a guitar shop today and sees, 300 guitars on the wall or 1,000 guitars on, sorry, that's my coffee machine just descaling itself in the corner. Hopefully that will stop in a minute. They have no idea about what a small music store looked like in the 60s. You really are talking, there was no sense that there were any Fenders or Gibsons hanging on the wall. I think we probably had the Marshall, we were a Marshall dealer from pretty much day one. Marshall are 2 years older than us, so kind of Marshall started in 62. So certainly early doors, there are some early black and white pictures where you see a Marshall amplifier in the background, but I don't think there was any sense that I mean, the business, I think, was fairly successful fairly quickly. I mean, they moved premises a couple of times before I was even young enough to remember the business. And so, but my earliest memories of the store probably are from the late 70s, early 80s. And although it was still a fairly small business by then, I certainly have these sort of visions of there probably were 100 guitars on display, and there certainly were Fenders and there certainly were Gibsons. And I think I remember, a big part of our growth in those days was the emergence of the synth, and so all those kind of like, Yamaha DX and Roland Juno, so I always remember about half of Andertons being full of synthesizers that were all kind of amazing. And then I think we had this, the big explosion when digital recording became a thing. So it's hard to imagine now, you sort of sit there with your iPhone and GarageBand creating some pretty amazing content, and you sort of go back to, back in the sort of the early 90s, there was this first sense that you didn't need to spend £100,000 putting a studio together. You could maybe do it now for £10,000 or £15,000, which obviously still now you just think is an astronomical amount of money. But people would, I can remember working in Andertons in the sort of probably mid to late 80s was when I sort of started being there on Saturdays and sort of hanging around. And that was, selling, actually it might be a bit later than that, might have been full time by then in the 90s, but where people would buy Alesis ADATs and Akai samplers and big mixing, so still spending relatively speaking a lot of money, but it was a fraction of what it would have cost you to have put a big reel-to-reel kind of recording setup together. So I joined in, I had a bit of a disaster at school, so did well at GCSE level, and then had a fairly disastrous sixth form college experience, and kind of came to my dad and just went, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've messed everything up, Dad. And he was pretty angry because I'd basically spent 2 years bunking off of school and not telling him. So he basically just gave me he said, fine, start here, but you don't really know anything about anything. So you're just going to be the guy that sweeps up and gets boxes for people and makes customers cups of tea and all that kind of stuff. And so I was like, fine, sign me up, I'll do that. And I was sort of at this time, I'd been playing guitar for about 3 years, I suppose, maybe by this time. And I was in a couple of bands. And so I did, fairly quickly get involved in guitar sales. And I was really young, and I felt everything was changing. So this is well before the internet was around or anything like that, but just the vibe was changing. There was the customer that had for the previous 25 years really been kind of like either the professional or the semi-professional musician. Okay. There really wasn't this sense that there was a lot of people just playing guitar for fun. You were probably doing it and trying to earn an extra 20 quid a week or whatever, doing a couple of gigs or whatever. But that was changing. And I think I was young enough that I didn't have any preconceived ideas about how, from the past, about how things should be. And I didn't like some of the things that we changed sort of relatively early on in my being there. And it was, you know, my dad was very, very supportive. And I always felt my dad was a sort of quite a visionary in terms of how he wanted the business to be run. But silly things like, you know, we were one of the first music stores in the country to just implement something where everybody would wear the same Andertons t-shirt so that, you know, customers could see who was a member of staff and who actually worked, who was a member of the public. And this is mad now to think. Then we banned smoking in the shop. I mean, you can't even believe that this was still a thing, but you know, like it was like you can't smoke. And we just started to go, you know what? Most music stores at the time, you know, including Andertons, had that real Aladdin's cave approach to selling anything. And it was really intimidating if you didn't know what you want. You could absolutely feel how uncomfortable people were coming into the store if they didn't have a really good knowledge of what everything was already.
Yes.
So we started ranging products. So you go, look, we're not going to just sell a real mishmash of guitars. We're going to choose the brands carefully that we want to do, and we're going to select the models out of that to put ranges in the store. And we're going, you know, it was like, it all sounds mad now because I kind of feel that's normal. But at the time, it was really not normal for guitars. So we did that. My dad, bless him, took a massive punt just after I started in moving the store to a much bigger location. Mm-hmm. Quite a big premises came up for sale in Guildford that had been vacant for several years and was an absolute dump. But he bought this, and he and a few other guys, you know, put, oh God, thousands of hours into sort of, you know, trying to refurbish this place, whilst we carried on trying to run the store in the old location. And then when it was ready, we moved across. And so that was amazing, because that meant all the ideas we had about how the store should be laid out for like a modern music store, we had this sort of blank canvas to do it in. So that was cool. And I suppose in that first maybe 10 or 15 years of being there, we really went from a small business that had, you know, 4 or 5 staff and you know, relatively local customer base into, you know, by 2000, 2005, you know, Andertons was definitely, it was the sort of, you know, it was the dominant music store in certainly in the county, maybe even slightly further afield. We were doing a bit of mail order as well, and we were a thing. I'd put in an electronic stock control system around about 2000 as well, which again, you know, just meant that any member of staff could see what you had in stock, what deals were available on it, all that kind of stuff. It almost sounds mad now because it's just like such a standard thing. Yeah. And then I guess I'd said to my dad at the time, my dad had said around about early 2000s, he was like mid 2000s maybe, he'd made a conscious effort that he was going to retire and I was going to kind of take over. And so I wasn't working on the shop floor very much anymore. I was quite office based and sort of, you know, looking for opportunity, tweaking this electronic stock control system. We were trading online by then, you know, we had one of these very early websites. So that was probably, I was spending a lot of my time trying to understand how to, you know, how this worked and what the opportunities were there. And then I remember really quite quickly watching some YouTube content. And I've said it before, there's two people that I've really, well, in fact, I honestly think there's one person that if I'd not seen him doing his thing, I would not have joined the dots, but was the old Andy. He's now at Reverb. I just know him as Andy from Reverb, but at the time he was Andy from ProGuitarShop.com. Right. Yeah. And they were a retailer in America that just sold pedals. And Andy was the guy who every day or every couple of days would take a pedal, set his little camera up, do the demo of it, told you why it was good, told you what the deal was from their retailer, and that was the end. And I saw this and I literally just immediately, I'm just like, that's the future. That's how we're going to do this. And so I then, and this is probably all within the same 24-hour kind of period. And then on the internet, just looking at other YouTube stuff, and I find Rob Chapman. And Rob Chapman is this British YouTuber with 10,000 followers on YouTube. And I'm like, 10,000 people? That's like, that would take us like 6 months to see in Andertons. It's just like, it's just massive. So I sent Rob an email, or maybe, you know, his phone number might have even been on his site. I can't remember, but I've literally picked up the phone. Rob, I'm Lee from Andertons Music Company. Da, 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 da. I'm interested in working with you on YouTube stuff. Little did I, you know, Rob came across as this, you know, he was very professional and, you know, yes, you know, absolutely, I know what I'm doing here. It's marketing, blah, 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 blah. Had no idea, of course, Rob's making all this up as he's going like, bloody hell, I've got a phone call from someone that actually wants to pay me to make some YouTube content. I better sound professional. You know, it's like, we're all kids. We're not, I mean, you know, grown-up kids. Nobody really knows what they're doing. We're trying to pretend that we do. So I did a deal with Rob where he'd come down for like a day a month or something like that, and we'd make some video. And the early videos are so bad. You know, they're shot on a crappy camera in front of this badly creased up white blanket that we sort of hanging up on the wall behind us. And it was almost like getting people that had no idea about how to record anything to just hold stuff and put microphone, you know, it's so bad.
Yeah. And
at the time, I'm sort of, you know, in my head, I've got this relatively professional, like, you know, QVC style. This is what we're going to do. And we're going to show products and we're going to sell loads of them. And it was so bad, you know, obviously that it was just, we didn't sell anything, you know, it was like, it was so bad, but it was really fun to do, you know, and Rob and I quickly became quite close friends and sort of just went, it was the one day a month that I looked forward to more than any other. You know, it was just going to be a laugh, basically doing something with my friend, talking about guitars. And after 2 or 3 months, this sort of trickle of emails started coming in from customers going, I've just bought this XYZ from you. Nothing to do with any videos that it's not a product that you've featured in a video, but I've just decided to buy it from you because I like what you're doing on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
And that for me was the light bulb moment that suddenly gave me clarity about what we needed to do on YouTube, which was this idea of going, it's all about this sense of community. It's about just going, it doesn't really matter what we decide to film on YouTube. I mean, I think we try and keep it as topical as possible with new product coming out, but yes, to a certain degree, it wasn't about doing this super slick sales presentation about, you know, why you need to buy this XYZ. And to be honest with you, 99% of what you see on YouTube now is so disingenuous around, you know, it's just lots of people getting paid to tell you that things are amazing. You know, it's like, you know, and I think we kind of just went, let's not get sucked into that. Let's just have fun. So that the dual presenter thing became a real core component of the video. So it was all about having 2 people who had good chemistry and actually probably were friends off camera as well as on camera, who just were like, what do you think? Let's mess around with these new pedals or this new amp, this new guitar, and be as, you know, sort of honest as we can about how does it sound, you know. And when I say sort of honest, you know, we're not here to assassinate anything, but equally, you know, we're not rolling any turds in glitter either. No. You know, it's like, that's, you know, 9 times out of 10, we're playing a product that we've probably never played before, or we've had it for 5 minutes before the camera starts rolling, and it's just plugged in, and it's, what does it sound like? And, you know, and hopefully in those 20 minutes or whatever of the filming, the conversation goes off somewhere, and, you know, you start to, it's a story of Pete touring, or whatever Rob's been up to, or Rabir, or whoever it is, you know, something happens, something's been in the news, you know, whatever. And it just creates 20 or 30 minutes worth of entertaining content where you find out a little bit about the gear. You definitely feel like what these guys are doing is fun. You know, you want to you want to participate in that somehow, you know, go and get your own guitar and have a jam or whatever.
Yeah.
And at the end of it all, and this is the bit that I think the beauty of it all is, Andertons, and this really is, I think, the nub of it. Andertons doesn't need to sell you the product that's in the video. It just needs you to decide that the next time you want to buy something, you feel like Andertons would be the place that you would like to buy it from.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big difference, you know, when most channels that are out there that hit a certain size just kind of become hired gun channels. You know, it's like, you know, hello, YouTuber XYZ, how much do you charge to do video demos, please? And they go, I charge X. And the manufacturer goes, oh, great, I'm going to send you a blah, blah, blah. And they go, okay, cool. And of course, you know, the rules are set then, that this is not going to be somebody getting paid to unbox a product and tell you why it's not very good. Mm-hmm. This is somebody who's going to get paid to tell you why you should buy this product, so that hopefully the manufacturer that paid them to do that then pays them to do the next video and the next. And I sort of feel like that's fine. And I'm absolutely, I've never seen any real evidence that any of these guys are lying about what a product can do. Mm-hmm. But of course, it is the, what you're getting is the, you know, I suppose it's when you take a photo of someone and says, let me just get you my good side, you know, that's what you're seeing. Yeah. And I think, you know, Andertons has actually done a quite a good job, and it has had some really awkward conversations with suppliers over the years of going, we're not going to do that, you know. No. So
I've had stuff sent to me from manufacturers and things, and I've always been, like you just said, if I don't like it, I'm not doing the video. And I've sent stuff back in the past. Like, I've sent stuff back, and I felt bad at the time because I thought, oh, maybe I should just do the video. And I do say, you know, but I thought, no, I'm not taking payment for this or doing that and saying this is great, this, that, and the other. If I wouldn't use it myself, because then I feel like you lose all your sort of respect in, you know, the videos you're putting out. I feel like you're sort of fooling people a little bit. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I don't necessarily think that like I say, they're definitely not accusing anyone of, you know, I don't think there's a sense that somebody's plugged a product in, but what you're actually hearing is something else, you know, just to, you know, I don't think that's going, but I think it's reasonably possible now, you know, if you get you get a decent guitar player, there isn't really any rubbish made anymore. You know, everything is of a certain standard. You get a really good guitar player that knows what they're doing, that plugs into a device and maybe puts it into a mix of a track. So you kind of, you know, maybe it sounds a bit fatter than it really is. There's a bit of post-production gone on there. And I think you can make anything sound pretty amazing these days. And maybe to give all the products credit, relative to what you could have bought 20 years ago, everything is pretty amazing nowadays. So that I don't necessarily know that I don't necessarily, as I said, I wouldn't discount any of those other, you know, I think you have to know what you're watching, you know, if there's a difference, I think between, there's a difference between, you need to know when is something an advert, when is something a paid promotion, you know, when is something, even Andertons to a certain extent, you know, you have to accept that you know, Andertons survives or, you know, exists by selling you stuff. So I mean, to a certain extent, you know, you have to sort of take everything with a certain degree of skepticism. But I would like to think that, you know, Anderton's vested interest is in you developing a genuine and long-term trust in what we do and say. That's our number one aim, is that, you know, and I think in any business could take something away from that, you know, that we're very clear in our mind that the trust and loyalty of our customers is the number one thing that we have to achieve. And if that means we ruffle a few feathers with our suppliers over the years, so be it.
Yeah.
But
I feel like that's the right way to do things. That does seem like, and it does. That's why I will go. If I bought recently, literally in the last month, I bought that THR that's on the back there. I've got another one. You can't see it. It's up there.
2 THRs.
Yeah, I use one because I teach, so I use one.
Right. Yeah.
One for me. And then I was like, well, if I'm using that, and everyone always comments and says how great it sounds, so it should be only fair that the student has the same thing. So I bought the exact same thing so that they can plug in like wirelessly with this sort of Line 6 transmitter. And I bought it from Andertons like literally a month ago. And I bought one of the what's it called, the air step pedals that goes with it.
Yes, I've not tried. I've used the air step. What did we use the air step for? Oh man, I can't even remember what we used the air step for in a video recently. I think it was to control. It might have been
was it a Spark amp?
No, I think it was to control. It was to have a simple MIDI board where we were using that new Kernam Ridge and a little MIDI multi-effect. It was just kind of like, I mean, I am hopeless at MIDI, like beyond hopeless. But even I was relatively able to use the app to set it up. They're quite clever, those little X-Sonic things, aren't they? So
they look great. They look really good. And they're sort of, as I said, they're wireless, and it works really well. You can't see it stand on the floor down there, but yeah, it works really well with the amp. And then it allows me now to, I think the THR is the best practice amp anyway, in my opinion. But literally, you can change channels with the foot controller now, and I don't have to sort of get up and press the little buttons on top. So
yeah, I mean THR, and I mean we've got THR's Positive Grid, the little Boss Katana Air. There's little Fender ones, little Vox ones. I think that all those advancements that have been made in making practice amps more like you like home entertainment soundbar type products, they're all substantially better sounding than your traditional little 10 watt with a sort of 6-inch speaker in it type thing.
Yes.
I mean the options now for a guitar player to play at home, whether they want to use plugins or things like THR, or I mean it's or valve amps into load boxes, or it's like, man alive, it's like I remember getting told off sitting at home when I was I must have been 17 or 18, still living at home, and I had a 50 watt high watt 1x12 valve combo in my bedroom.
Gonna be loud
because that was what I was gigging with. And I just remember noodling in my room, and I think the whole family was out, and it was like, and the bang 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 on the front door, bang bang bang, and it was the next door neighbor basically going, turn the bloody amplifier down. It's like, oh sorry, but it's just mad to sort of it's as I said, what you've got to muck around at home with nowadays is insane.
Yeah, no, there's another pedal sat on the desk here, which you can't see. Is another one bought from Andertons. That's RK5. Can you see Richie Kotzen?
Oh, wow, cool.
So that I use for online teaching. Just plug into that, because that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I've gigged with that as well. Once we did a gig in a place called Alderney, but we did.
That's Sansamp, right?
Yeah, Sansamp.
Sansamp. Yeah, great little. I like. That's what the company is. No amp, basically, isn't it? Is the name of the company, but yeah, it's all without amp, whatever the French translation is. It's a cracking little product. So
yeah, Lee, I've got some questions for you, because
I'm
go for it. Of your time as well, but the guys have asked some questions on the group that I sort of manage, and I'm gonna fire them away if that's all right to you. Rob Cox, he says, how are you planning to expand Andertons, but also keep it local? Could you buy your neighbours out and maybe make a mega store? And what are your plans with Andertons Extra?
Okay, good questions. So I think fairly early doors, I made a conscious decision that Anderton should only really have one shop, one HQ, and that was a combination of selfishly wanting to be home every night to see my children, and but also as well commercially just going. I'd never been to a chain of music stores where I honestly thought the second, third, fourth, 10th, whatever one was as good as the first one. So I always wanted to sort of really feel like we were focused on one thing. And of course, the internet has enabled us to do that, because all of our fulfillment centers and everything, and we've got about 60,000 square foot of space in Guildford on an industrial estate about a couple of miles from the shop, maybe less than that. It's really under one umbrella. You know, all the best people at Andertons can be wherever they need to be on any given day to make sure, you know, everything's running smoothly. So there won't be an expansion of Andertons beyond what we can do online. In terms of what we can do online, you know, we definitely can do more, particularly internationally, than what we've done at the moment. Andertons Extra was a bit of a, probably didn't work out how I hoped. So I was very conscious of the fact that about 80% of our YouTube audience aren't in the UK, and therefore it's not easy for them to buy stuff from Andertons. Okay. And I wanted to create this kind of subscription model YouTube thing where people would pay a small monthly subscription, but they would get extra content. And I think a combination of technology issues and me maybe misjudging the appetite for that, and maybe not throwing enough money at it for the additional content, meant that it never really took off. So Extra now is a free, it's just a free service that people can watch. And the main upside of Andertons Extra, if you decide to subscribe to that, it's a free subscription, but you still have to subscribe. Okay. Is that you can see all the videos with no adverts in them. So if YouTube just annoys you by putting adverts in the video, you can. And there's a little bit of extra content in there, and I think from time to time we will throw some extra dedicated content on there. And it's in the back of our minds always to kind of go, what else could it do? But yes, it was, I don't know. I think we launched Extra as well, or we went into Extra just as COVID started. And if I'm completely honest, COVID was such an enormous distraction for us. You know, there were so many challenges to kind of overcome during that sort of 2-year period. Mainly being busier than we've ever been before, with less staff than we've ever had before, you know, just because you're so worried about, you know, how people being ill and mixing and all that kind of stuff. I think Extra just ended up losing momentum, and so that is something that we may pick up again. But
was that a stressful time for you, Lee, when it was sort of COVID and things? Obviously for most people it was, but did you find that a stressful time with obviously the shop maybe having to close, and apart from online, did you find that stressful? Or?
It was stressful, but not in the way I think everybody anticipated it being. I think when we started getting news in early 2020, is that right? Timeline rise in early 2020, that there was this virus coming from China, and, you know, it was going to be bad. I think we all thought that the fear was that, you know, if nobody could buy anything, we'd just go bust, you know, so that was the stress. Yeah. Of course, what actually very, very quickly happened was that, you know, millions of people in the UK were told basically, could you just stay at home all day, but we'll still pay you. And then, of course, they all went, well, I'm bored, I should do something. So we, you know, the demand for guitar products you could use at home, so it could be guitars or home recording or whatever, went through the roof. You know, our business doubled in size compared to what we were doing in maybe 2018. Yeah. But of course your staff, and of course, you know, we have a duty of care to all our staff, are all going, I don't want to come to work if it's not safe. So you're kind of, you know, the stress was trying to manage this demand like you've never seen before. Staff, you know, worried about their safety, and sort of, you know, I mean, we did actually, you know, we did manage to get through it largely unscathed and fulfilling, you know, all the orders we were getting. So the interesting challenge from last year is, of course, we came into 2022 geared up to do this level of demand, you know, so we had all, you know, staff and warehouse space and stock and everything like that. And now, of course, the demand is beginning to sort of contract a little bit, and you're sort of, I think we all knew it probably would, but you're sort of going, where is it going to level out? You know, what's the new normal? Overheads are obviously going through the roof with inflation, and, you know, so I would say the last 3 years, and probably the outlook for the next year or two is quite difficult to predict. I mean, Andertons, again, part of the, I suppose, part of the way we run the business here is you know, we've been extremely risk averse and sensible with all the investment that we put in place. So every year, it's a very old fashioned structure, Andertons. It's an old fashioned partnership. So it's not a limited company. It's just it's my dad and I as the two equity holding partners, and then two other colleagues of mine that are the non-equity holding partners. And between the four of us, we make a conscious decision every year to reinvest quite a chunk of the profits into making sure the business is capable of meeting its goals that it wants to make, you know, in the future. So we own all the premises that we're in, and we've got no debt. So to a certain extent, Andertons can roll with the punches during a time like this. It's almost a bit like going, okay, fine, it's going to be, you know, the business might not be as profitable as we'd like it to be, but there's no sense that anybody's going to, you know, start closing on loans that we own or anything that we owe or anything like that. So I think we sort of sit here going, who knows what the next 12 months will bring. I guarantee you Andertons will still be here in 12 months time. And I guarantee you that we'll be as passionate about doing what we do as we've ever been. But whether we'll be bigger or smaller or the same size or whatever is really quite hard to predict at the moment. So
yeah, no, that's a great answer to that question. Couple more. So Rod Thomas says, Lee, you're on a desert island. What rig would you take?
That is the most asked for video ever. And it's the one video that I really don't want to film because I don't even know that it's not, is it even possible? Yeah, I mean, let's assume that the island has mains power so that we can at least have an amplifier.
Yes.
But I mean, it's such a boring answer because you sit there going, for me, having new gear and buying a new pedal or changing guitar up or whatever, that's what keeps the whole guitar thing exciting. You know, it's like I'm not writing, I don't play guitar for a living. I'm not writing hit singles or anything like that. I just love doing it. And I love the fact that I can grab a Telecaster and then go, actually, I'm going to try Les Paul instead, or actually I'm going to go and find something with a Bigsby tremolo system on it. And, you know, and if you sort of said, right, you can't do any of that.
Yes. I
worry that actually after a month of playing the same guitar, I'll probably just put it down because I'll be a bit bored of it and I just won't play it anymore. So, you know, I actually think being on a desert island with only one guitar might be really bad for my sort of, enthusiasm for the guitar. But to just come back, it's Rod, right? Just to come back to give him the answer.
Yeah. I
think on an island where, I'm going to be pragmatic here. I'm going to assume that, I'm going to assume that, that conditions are not going to be ideal for keeping a guitar in. So I just want a bulletproof Telecaster and a solid state amplifier, like a Boss Katana or something that will never go wrong, because I'm guessing I'm never going to be able to find a shop that sells valves on the desert island.
There's going to be no like amp repair shop there. No.
Exactly. So I need a bulletproof setup. So I'm going to have a Telecaster and a Boss Katana. There you go.
Great choice.
And I'm probably bored of playing it after a month, and I'll use it as a paddle to escape off the island so I can get to a guitar store and buy something new.
Brilliant answer. Matt Amore says, what are the main qualities, experience needed, do you feel, to work at Andertons?
Just passion for the products and an ability to communicate about, to be passionate about what you're talking about. Okay. So, you don't have to be a great player. We've got a whole mix of people at Andertons that, from insane advanced level players through to people that, could get by busking a few chords. But what they are all passionate about is the instruments, the products we sell, and making sure that, the customer has a great experience in the store.
Yes.
Again, one of the other things we've I think for probably 30 years or something, it's been like this, certainly 20 years, we've never paid a staff commission. It's not about closing the sale. You know, it's just about going, did the customer have a great experience? That's whether they're just looking, whether they're buying, whether they're bringing something back because they didn't like it or it doesn't work. Just need to have a good experience every time. And if you can do that, everything else falls into place, and, you know, the business works. So that's all you got to do. I mean, in fairness as well, you know, I would say now probably only about a third, maybe even less than that, a quarter of the staff in Andertons are actually, you know, customer facing salespeople. So there's, you know, it's loads of opportunities to, you know, work in our e-commerce team. We've got about 25, 30 people in our e-commerce team that are all obviously, you know, technical people or copywriting people. We've got purchasing teams, big logistics team, obviously, at our distribution centers, admin people. So I think, I mean, yeah, if you want to sell guitars at Andertons, you basically need to be passionate about guitars and a good communicator.
Fantastic. Very good. Next question. This is from Ryan Davey, who was actually a guest on the podcast just a week ago. He said, artists you have always wanted on the Captain's Meet, and he said, not John Mayer.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I guess all the guitar players that inspired me to learn to play are all, you know, the guitar gods who are getting on a bit now, if they're even still around. I would love to meet Eric Clapton or David Gilmour, maybe Jimmy Page. You know, like, it's the same list that most players, I guess, of my age or younger or whatever would list off. That said, I have so enjoyed meeting, you know, there's players that Steve Vai, John Petrucci, Kiko Loureiro, these are guys where I'm really not into that kind of style of music particularly.
Yeah.
And I had no real, I really wasn't sure that we'd have that much in common during the interviews. And honestly, I said right at the beginning, the guitar is the great leveler. You know, yes, they've chosen to play a style of music that's not really my cup of tea, and I've chosen to play a style of music that's probably not their cup of tea or whatever. But it doesn't matter. That's all superficial. You know, we're still all at our hearts all interested in the guitar and the noises it makes and the products that you've combined to make different noises with. Yeah. And I've really, you know, come away from a lot of interviews going like, you know, we're all on the same, you know, we're all on the same page as guitar players. If we could all just stop shouting at each other because, you know, you like one amplifier and you like a different amplifier, we'd all get along fine. You know, it's like,
yeah. Do you have a favorite guest, Lee? Can you say that? Do you have like a favorite guest you thought I really enjoyed that? Was there a guest that you've done?
Yeah, but you know what? There's probably a few. I kind of feel Joey Landreth was because of how that came about, and I really feel like somebody introduced me to the Brothers Landreth album before anybody knew who they were, and it inspired me so much that I just decided to email them. You know, you could literally find Joey's email address on their webpage. You know, it's like I email them and go, look, if you're ever in the UK, I'd love to, you know, have you on the show and tell more people about your music. And then it just so happened that they were just embarking on this tiny UK tour, you know, where they were playing to audiences of like 150 people or whatever. And they were like, do you know what, we actually are going to be over. And we did this thing. And I really felt like Andertons played a part in allowing them to be better known.
Yes.
And Joey and I have always stayed in touch. In fact, the whole band really is a lovely, but particularly Joey, and obviously at the time Ariel Posen was playing in that band. So those guys, I sort of feel, you know, that's always special to me. In terms of other artists that we've had on, again, Albert Lee was an amazing one. Who was the other guy that we had on? Oh man, no, there was Phil Palmer was one, and there were who again, I'd never really heard of Phil before, but he started talking about all the albums that he played on in the 80s, and it was just like, oh my god, you know, that one inspired, you know, that I had them all, you know, all mega bands. And again, I suppose the other one that I did was I decided to interview my dad in 2019 or something like that. And he'd always been quite camera shy about being involved in anything like that, but he decided to do it. And then we couldn't shut him up. So the interview's about 3 hours long, you know. But again, it's just like, I had a lot of people contact me after that who maybe lost their dad or whatever, and sort of said, you know, I'd never had the opportunity to really talk to my dad like that, and find out about his life. So that'll always be.
Was that the hardest interview for you, Lee? Like, or the most nerve-wracking one? Talking to your dad about that, or not? Was that?
I don't get nervous. I think that's one of my. I think that's one of probably I'm just lucky like that. So you can probably throw me into any situation, and I'm not fazed about talking to someone or talking in front of people. Okay. So I don't know that. I think there was some of the bigger the artist, the more pressure you feel to feel like you've done a bit of research about who they are. So, you know, you don't sound like a complete dick when you sort of ask them something that every other person watching knows the answer to already, but you just haven't bothered to do any research. Oh, you've put me on the spot now, but I can honestly say, I don't think I'll tell you what, I've loved them all. The interviews that I've, bizarrely, because of what we're doing now, the interviews that I've kind of kicked back from now and said, I don't know that I want to do anymore, are the Zoom ones. Okay. Because I had one really great Zoom video with Carlos Santana, which was epic. And Carlos just, you know, it's like, he was so hilarious and funny about essentially talking about how he felt that getting high was basically, you know, it was at the real heart of making great music. So there was this really sort of inappropriate 10 minutes of conversation around sort of going like, is this really a responsible thing to put out on the internet? You know, it's like, hey kids, if you really want to write a cool song, go and get high. Yeah, the Zoom ones are the ones I've struggled the most with, because I just don't think you get the same connection as you do when you're actually in the room with someone.
Well, but thank you for doing this with me today, Lee, because
I don't. Yeah, I think, to be fair, what kills the Zoom thing is we can't play guitar. Like, you know, if you were here, I'm sure we would have a couple of guitars sat on our laps, and at some point we'd have a bit of a jam, and that's part of the fun. But yeah, and the technology is just not there yet, is it? To sort of, you know, be able to have a bit of a jam across a video call.
I feel like it's coming, maybe in the next, I don't know, 10 years or so. I feel like it is coming, maybe even earlier than that.
Be crazy, wouldn't it? Be absolutely. I mean, it'll just again, another total technology game changer, as all of a sudden there's like zero latency. Yeah. But yeah, maybe when we're on 10G or whatever the sort of the latest wireless tech is.
I'm going to ask you, Lee, the final question, and then I'll let you go, because I've taken up a lot of your time this morning. I do appreciate it. Last question. What do you do, Lee, in your downtime? What's your chill? When you're not at Andertons, when you're not, you know, working, what do you do? What's your sort of hobbies? I know guitar, obviously.
Yeah, it's gosh, that's a jolly good question. And my wife will tell you that my, without doubt, most infuriating part of my personality is that I don't switch off. So I'm always looking at things people have sent me on email, or things people have said on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or whatever, and I'm always thinking about ideas of things to do with work. So I did fall out of love with the guitar for a while, probably in my earlier days, where it all just got too much, you know, working with guitars during the day and then being in a band in the evening, and just like guitars. And I'm really, really pleased to say that where I've been in my life, maybe the last 10 years, I've really got the balance right now, I think, with the guitar. So I do, you know, tonight, for example, my wife is working. And so when the kids go to bed, and they're quite young, so they'll be in bed relatively early, that's my guitar. I will play guitar tonight. And I love the fact that I am looking forward to doing that.
Yes.
And then what else do I like? I do like spending time with my kids and just, mooching about. I like football, although I'm a West Ham fan. So this season it's not been a lot of fun viewing. And I'm a pretty simple bloke, really. I don't think I've got, guitars, football, kids. Yeah. It's like, that's about my life.
and coffee, fine coffee by the sounds of it. Sounds like you got a posh coffee machine in that room.
Yes, I think, I just can't, I struggle to believe that actually this country still buys frozen coffee granules, Nescafe and the like that. That is what I drunk. We were the posh family that could afford Gold Blend Nescafe, sort of when I was younger. And you just sit there going, the minute, I think the rest of the world just looks at England and just, or the UK and just goes, you drink that disgusting stuff, do you? So yes, nice coffee has been something that over the last maybe 8 or 10 years I've kind of discovered, and it's definitely a thing. In my special mug, I've got another thing as well. I like buying really small mugs with stupid, I can't even see this on my camera now. On there, is it? Yeah, absolutely. So you think that, this is one of my children's mugs. Absolutely not. That's like, that's one of my favorite little mugs to have coffee out of. So
from another coffee lover then, Lee, what's your coffee recommendations?
Oh, wow. Do you know what? I feel like I could and should plug these guys. So I at home, I use the Nespresso style coffee pod things.
I know, yeah.
But and Nespresso make lovely coffee, but I just used to feel so guilty about all these aluminium non-recyclable pods all the time. So I now subscribe to a little company called Roar and Gill. We'll give them a shout out if anybody's interested. Don't even know how you spell it. I think it's Roar and Gill. And they do, I get a monthly pack of about 100 pods from them. I'm not endorsed, by the way. I just pay for them. And they are compostable. So you just chuck them in with all your food waste and they mulch down. And then in here, I've got like one of these things that actually does a bean to cup thing. And I'm a bit useless in that I don't know what you're like with I'm a bit like this with wine. I never really remember from one week to the next what wine I like. So I always end up in the off license, sort of just going, oh, that looks like a nice label. I'll just buy that one. And I'm a bit like that with coffee. I sort of go into a supermarket and go, oh, I need to buy some more coffee. And I can't remember what I liked before or which country it was from. Yes. So I just end up going, I'll try another one. So this week's coffee is from Waitrose. We've got a nice Waitrose near Andertons, and it's from Brazil.
Very nice.
And it tastes very nice.
Very nice. I tend to use, I don't have a sort of as you said, a bean to cup thing, but I have like a cafetiere, which I just do every morning.
Nice.
And it's Lavazza sort of coffee.
Yeah.
Pop that in, leave it for a bit, give it a plunge.
Yeah.
Quite enjoy that process.
Yeah.
And then it's a great coffee. It tastes really good. So, yeah. But yeah, I do want to invest in a decent.
Isn't it awful though now? Like, you go to a friend's house and they go, do you want a drink? You go, yeah, have coffee, please, like that. And you see them reach for the sort of the Nescafe jar and you go, actually, I'll just have a glass of water. It's fine now. Right. Yeah. It's so bad, isn't it? Like massive snobs, first world problems. It's just like, anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. So thank you very much, mate. It's a real pleasure because you mentioned that you're not a fan of these Zoom sort of calls, but I do appreciate your time. Thank you.
You've done a great job. It was really nice to talk to you, and no awkward pauses or anything like that. So really good. And again, thank you for this, and congrats on what you're doing with your channel and stuff. And thank you very much again for teaching the next generation of guitar players, because it's important that I think everything is around making sure that there are people like you out there to take the next generation of people that are interested in guitar and make them want to do it. So thank you very much too.
Thank you, Lee.